Hello and welcome to this edition of Lion's Roar. I'm delighted to have you back, and I hope you're enjoying the podcast, you're liking and subscribing. Today we have Diane Forsythe with us. You might have seen Diane last week. She did our weekly roundup, but she's had a busy week as a member of the Finance Committee, the PAC and the Audit Committee. Diane, how are you?
Thank you, Gavin. It's great to be here. I'm good. As you say, really, really busy with all the finance, following up on the budget. I'm with the finance minister in the finance committee this week as well. So just working hard in the assembly and all the finance issues.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about today. So you'll know from the weekend we've been talking about people being taxed to death. Are you getting much sense from business? Are you getting much sense through the assembly that people are concerned about what they've seen in the budget and the impact it's going to have on businesses more generally?
Yeah, I've had lots of businesses in touch, lots of different organisations, ones from the childcare sector. I think the shock of getting this coming through as well, it wasn't subscribed to in the Labour manifesto. Nobody was expecting to see it and to be hit upon the businesses, and the unpredictability and the fear of what else could come for them as well. But definitely everyone's sitting very tight and worrying about what this is going to mean for their businesses.
Have you got any practical examples that people have brought to you from a business perspective?
Well, yeah, I've had the hospitality industry, obviously, I've been in touch before. They were looking for reductions in their rates. They're already facing pressures. Those in England had already got reductions and they hadn't got it. And some of them have been in touch as they're coming into Christmas. They're just really facing the pressure of not knowing what this extra bill is going to mean for them as they get through the festive period, and they're worried about how many times they can open and setting their management accounts going forward. So it's a really worrying time for industries already under pressure.
Management accounts, you're an accountant.
Yeah.
So whenever you bring your professional expertise to politics, how do you find that when you're on the finance committee and the PAC, and are you sitting there trying to tot up profit and loss accounts for departments, or are you able to set that aside and think more generally?
I think that it helps the whole thing. I'd worked in public sector accountants as well as private sector, so just that wider perspective. And I think that it's just really useful that you're able to bring a slightly different perspective to the table when I'm looking at the numbers. Can ask good detailed questions off the officials and put that to use. But I think that we have a really well-rounded team in terms of the experience as well as the technical piece. But I love a good bit of number crunching and just getting to the root cause. And I think that's what we need whenever we're reviewing the finances here, just to really get to the bottom of the important issues and where the money's going.
I'm glad you said that because I'm not sure there are many others that love a bit of number crunching. So that's good. You're enjoying it.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about sort of public finances and the impact it's going to have on service delivery and on public servants more generally in a moment. But I've been speaking with Diane from Sleepy Hollow, another Diane. So we're going to cut across to that interview now and listen to Diane and her experience on childcare. Okay, I'm delighted we're now joined by Diane from Sleepy Hollow. Diane, you've been a care provider for children in Northern Ireland for many years now. And as you know, we're considering the budget and the impact that's having on your sector particularly. So what are your first reactions?
Well, very alarmed. I mean, we're in the middle of collecting data from employers at the moment. I was at an employers meeting just not yesterday, the day before. A survey has gone out, and that was really looking at how we're struggling in recruitment and retention in our sector. And that was actually drawn up before the budget, the changes to the budget announcement. So it wasn't looking good prior to that. So this is just increasing our problem tenfold. We are in a recruitment and retention crisis in early years that we haven't seen the likes of before. And this is just putting us into an even more difficult situation.
Yeah, so we've been talking about national insurance contributions and the burden that that's going to put on you as an employer. But then the knock-on consequence that will have for families who are relying on your service. How do you get a sense at this stage, just, what the cost will be, what impact that might have on your provision particularly?
Yes. Well, we have a multifaceted, so we are both early years and school age, and we also have BASIP preschool settings. So we kind of see it across all areas of the sector. Obviously not the childminders who will, everybody's going to be impacted. But research, there haven't been a lot of statistics put out yet in Northern Ireland, but I've looked to England, to the Early Years Alliance. They have put out a poll, and the average nursery in England is going to see increases of national insurance contributions alone in the region of £18,600. One nursery that has 10 settings have estimated that their costs are going to increase by over £300,000 for 185 staff. So, I mean, the maths is there, you know, that's a huge impact. And really, in our sector, our main income comes through parents. So, unfortunately, every penny that is going to be increased for us to deliver the service has to be passed on to parents. And I suppose we would really be liking the Chancellor to relook at this. You know, why on earth, if I look at comparatives, we're doing preschool education. We're very, very fortunate to have the extended hours for next September, which will make a huge impact for working parents. But, you know, the cost for us to deliver that is going to be more than maybe the education sector delivering it. And they have been promised that they will get the support to meet the national insurance contributions. We would really feel that that's a call that needs to be made, that childcare providers get the support so this increase isn't passed on to parents.
Are you experiencing parents worried now about
Absolutely.
how much this may add to their bill? Are they asking you questions about sort of what's going to happen in the months to come?
Absolutely. You will know that Melted Parents are a very vocal group of parents who are very proactive in the lobbying side from parents, and they are constantly on social media, and they're now tracking really the cost of childcare increases across the sector. And parents are very worried. I mean, 74% of working mothers are in work, you know, and it is mothers, you know, at the moment who we're focusing on. It's a parental issue, of course, but it does seem to be, you know, if you look at the equality agenda, it really does seem to be a lot of working mothers who are displaced by any increase. You know, is this really going to make it impossible for parents to remain in work if the cost of their childcare is going to outweigh any salary that they bring home?
Yeah, so Melted Parents and I are a group very familiar to me and to my colleagues. They were pushing very much for childcare provision in Northern Ireland, recognising that there were 33 hours in England and no provision in Northern Ireland at all. So they brought forward to us a proposition and we responded to that, and Paul Given brought forward support, which deals with about 15% of the cost of childcare at this stage, because he could only build a scheme around the money available. Has that been helpful?
Absolutely. I mean, it really has been very helpful. Parents have needed it. Childcare providers are delighted to be able to implement it. There is a little bit of administrative burden in that, but, you know, we all want, you know, we meet the parents on our doorstep day in, day out. The parents are coming in to collect their children with us. We see the strain that parents are under, you know, and every year, none of us want to increase our cost to parents. You know, we start to dread this come around Christmas because we're thinking, and it's still, you know, we leave it almost at times to the last possible minute to notify parents because we're always hopeful, will we get a little bit more? And I think early decisions around this would be really important for parents in the new year, because that's at the time where we are all going to our accountant saying, look, what do we need to do to make sure that we are still feasible to run for another financial year? You know, we have to look at what is the impact going to be on us and providers, and what is the lowest possible margin. You know, we want to make sure that we are not increasing our fees by one penny more than we have to. So I think early decisions around, you know, can the Chancellor do something here in regards to the national insurance contributions? Are we going to be able to see a continuity of the Northern Ireland Childcare Subsidy Scheme? Those, I think, are decisions that we need to know early on in 2025 so that we can alleviate parents' worries and also alleviate providers' worries, you know, in terms of how are we going to, we're already facing a recruitment crisis. How are we going to be able to sustain this for another year? So the Northern Ireland Childcare Subsidy Scheme, to answer your question, has been absolutely vital. And I think, you know, it's probably one of the most significant overhauls we've seen in childcare in the last decade. And it's been a brilliant partnership and very well welcomed by providers and parents.
And something, Diane, I suspect that you and parents want to see us build upon. And Paul always indicated that it was the first step he could take with the resource that was available, but something to build upon. And now we're seeing that actually costs will increase for parents because of national insurance contributions. And we know that the Department of Education, I think their bill is going to be £51 million for national insurance contribution rises for teachers and classroom assistants and cleaners and caterers and so on. I mean, how much awareness do you think there is of the need for the Treasury to respond appropriately for childcare settings and for employers more generally?
I really think, I mean, the decision is baffling. I do understand that we need a viable economy, but whenever Labour were voted in, their Minister for Education said that early years was more about childcare, was about providing children with the best possible start in life. And they promised us that a system that was going to deliver change and deliver it now. Yet in their very first budget, they're almost wiping out any goodness, that has come out of their intention at the outset. We all know that childcare is early education, but there's also the element of it which allows parents to remain in work. Parents remaining in work is good for the economy. It's also good for the well-being of parents. And it's also, as I said earlier, is good for the equality agenda. So, I think we really need to be shouting this from the rooftops now. I think people don't necessarily realise the impact that there's going to be. And I know whenever I was doing a little bit of the research, thinking 18,500 for one setting before we even look at salary increases, that's massive. So I think that we need to be getting our own Northern Ireland local statistics out there really quite urgently. As I say, a lot of good work happening in Early Years Alliance, the London Early Years Foundation. They're already lobbying a lot, possibly a few weeks ahead of us, and getting that message out now to both providers and parents sooner. But nobody really here has put an average figure to that. So that as I say, I've picked that up from a recent poll that was just published. And I think once we get those facts and figures out, that will make people start to really pay attention to the impact it could have for the average childcare provider.
And then you have a great job with the FSB, Diane. You're on their policy group. So do you have a wider message for employers more broadly in Northern Ireland? Have you had the opportunity to take information from them as FSB and maybe share some of their concerns?
Yes, we're meeting again on Monday actually to discuss this very issue on Monday coming up. But hospitality sector, every sector is going to be impacted by this. Anybody who employs staff is going to be impacted by this. Now in childcare, obviously, we have to have an adult to staff ratio, so we can't compromise on our staff. But there are other areas where lots of other sectors are going to maybe put a freeze on recruitment. They're going to look at maybe the benefits of their employees. They're going to look at ways where they can cut costs, because we can't always drive the cost of prices higher. That is going to put customers off. So, it's where do we get the pinch? And nobody wants the pinch to be on quality of service. But I do feel that, this could come back to bite us in terms of freezing recruitment, or maybe seeing some redundancies come the new financial year, because employers across any sector won't be able to meet the demands of the increased costs that this is going to bring upon us.
Diane, thank you so much for sharing with us, and for not just your experience as a childcare provider, but for FSB and for the wider pressure on business. We've talked in the last couple of weeks about businesses being taxed to death and the consequence of increased costs and the inability to pass those on, and how that's going to frustrate job opportunities and growth more broadly. But for what you do in childcare, for what you do for our Northern Ireland economy, thank you very much for joining us on Lions Roar.
Thank you very much, and thanks for letting me share my viewpoints, and hopefully we'll see some good news before the next financial year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's Diane's experience about FSB, and with her policy hat on, and also Sleepy Hollow as a childcare giver. Very appreciative of the support that we've delivered through Paul's Childcare. And you're also an APS. So I was an Assembly Private Secretary in the Department of Education, and you were very much involved in a lot of that work. But you've been doing some questions recently about the impact this is going to have on government. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever the Finance Minister brought her statement, she had, with the budget impact, she had said that the Treasury are going to give some money towards the increase in cost of employers' contribution to public sector, but we didn't have any detail of how much that was or what it meant. So I've been putting questions into different departments about how much extra it's going to cost them. And I've had the Finance Minister come back with core civil service. It's going to mean an extra £20 million a year to them. The Education Minister has come back to say that through his organisations, including the Education Authority, it's going to be an extra £51 million a year. And then in the Department of Health, the Health Ministers came back from across the Trust to say it's going to cost another £100 million a year. And this is on top of existing pressures on the pays across the public sector. So to look into this and not know how much that Treasury is going to fund is extremely stressful whenever you're looking at a really tight budget, and there's a lot more still to come. I have questions in as well to Department of Communities asking the impact on the voluntary community sector, those bodies that are being directly funded to provide government funded projects and delivering on outcomes. So in order to try to make sure that our public services are secure and we've still got the people able to be paid to deliver those services, we're looking into an extreme pressure here, and we need to know how much it is and how much the Treasury are going to support us here in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, so you've got an incomplete picture so far, but you're waiting on the answers. You don't have arm's length bodies, you don't have government funded projects, as you say. Mike Nesbitt's response from the Department of Health said, yes, it's going to cost them 100 million, but they expect that they're going to get that money. And of course, we've seen the Scottish example, where Scotland, I think, got about 300 million pounds from Treasury, but the bill is going to be around 500 million. So there's a pressure there. Is there any sense from the finance minister that she can meet the entire cost of this, or is she going to have to find money from within stretched budgets?
Yeah, I think that it's the lack of information. So yesterday again, Finance Committee, the Finance Minister was there along with their senior officials, and I asked exactly this question, and they've had no indication of how much it's going to be. They're waiting to see the total quantification of it and the allocation of Barnett to see how much we're going to get here. But I think that they seem to be clear that they're not going to get it all. But they're waiting to see how much it's going to be. So that just the lack of clarity is extremely concerning in the face of already difficult financial constraints here.
Yeah. And in this week, I mean, there's always a challenge. Are you using money properly? Are we as a society using money properly and through government departments spending it wisely? And since it's Diane Day, we could talk about another Diane Dodds. She's been doing a lot of work on health. She's our health spokesperson. She was in this chair a couple of weeks ago chatting to me about assisted dying and chatting to me about folic acid being added to flour and so on. But this week she's unveiled a story which perhaps questions just how appropriate we do spend our public money.
Absolutely. And this project, along with a number of others, came to our Public Accounts Committee in terms of major capital projects, and has uncovered an awful lot of questions, but specifically to that one where Diane, she's done a lot of brilliant work to uncover this. But I feel that the important question here is, why did it take her to do so much digging to get this information? It's public money, and we should know where it's being spent and have confidence that it's being spent well. And if we're encountering serious issues with how it's being spent or coming up with problems, there needs to be the mechanisms that it's reported and brought to attention and rectified extremely quickly. So the fact that this has gone on for so long, and Diane is uncovering almost more information every day, it seems, this week, it's absolutely awful to be facing this, especially in our Department of Health, which is under incredible pressure financially. And as you say, 100 million extra they're facing in terms of these extra contributions. We really need to have confidence in where our money's going and that we're getting value for money.
Yeah, you're right. So she had a motion down on Tuesday. It was talking about the maternity hospital and the recognition that there's Pseudomonas in the pipes and there's a water issue. And yet it wasn't until Diane brought that motion and highlighted the fact that this project is 10 years delayed and twice as much in money terms, that we found out there's actually a second problem around gas network for medical gas and oxygen and so on. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to get that information. Does the PAC look into issues like this?
Yeah, absolutely. And that when the motion came and the information got brought to the floor in the way it did, it was really, really shocking, and just begs a lot of questions as to the information chain within the Department of Health. But yes, the PAC follows up on a number of these things. Our report on the major capital projects and recommendations for it will be out in the next few weeks. We're working on that right now. But yes, that's the job of the Public Accounts Committee, to conduct inquiries as to how money is being spent, where it's gone missing, and improving structures and hold people accountable on this. We would bring in the senior officials across different departments and just hold them to account and really challenge them on what has happened, what has gone wrong, and most importantly, making strong recommendations and following them up to make sure we're not facing this in other projects, and those projects like the hospital actually get completed. Because, we need to see a conclusion of this. There obviously is a need here. It's a significant capital project, and we need to see it delivered on, and safely and properly.
Sure. So when there's concerns out there about public money being used wisely, when we have pressures, we need to make sure that every penny is spent in the most appropriate way. We met the Prime Minister this week, and we had the chance to raise some of these issues with him. As we say, we're concerned about businesses and public sector being taxed to death, and the inability to recruit more people or pass costs on to hard-pressed consumers and families, and the impact that's going to have on growth economically. So as a Westminster team, we've been meeting with him and pushing that case as well, to say that not just Northern Ireland, but the impact of this budget across the United Kingdom is going to cause trouble.
Yeah, and obviously as the wider party, we're really proud to see you in there as the MPs doing that. In South Down, you don't have an MP that's sitting over in Westminster, so it's just brilliant to have you in there. And I've never met a Prime Minister myself. So
have you not?
No, it's just where do you meet him, or what's?
Well, there's been a few differences of prime ministers over the last number of years.
You've met loads then.
I've met quite a few. Yeah, so we were in Westminster. He has a Westminster office just behind the chamber. So if you look at the Speaker's chair, sort of 2 rooms back, lovely, grand, palatial, but no tea, no coffee. And that's at times of austerity, I suppose, that he pretends don't exist. Carla and Gregory and I went in, and we met with the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State and a couple of his officials. And it was a useful opportunity to talk about honouring the commitments that they supported on safeguarding the union, but also to raise some of the damaging impacts that this budget's going to have. And Carla particularly raising issues around agriculture, and we were able to raise issues more broadly. But yeah, we've met this Prime Minister in his Westminster office. We've met some Prime Ministers in Downing Street. We've met other Prime Ministers in other curious and strange places too.
Yeah, it's good to keep Northern Ireland high on the priority list. And has he any view to come over here anytime soon?
So he was here immediately after the election. I think he likes Northern Ireland. I think he has an interest in Northern Ireland. The last number of years make people think that we're only interested in working with Conservatives. We're interested in working with people that represent our country, that are the Prime Minister, that are in a position to respond positively and to help us. So yeah, I'd say he'll not be a stranger. He's been here twice since he became Prime Minister. He met us once.
Have to get him down to the Mourns.
Get him down to the Mourns, walk him up those hills, run him ragged. That's the plan.
Excellent.
Yes. Well, look, keep doing the good work, Diane. Keep pushing for the impact that this is going to have. I think hearing from you on Stormont basis, hearing from Diane on childcare, hearing from the other Diane on health, it's very important that we're all pulling together to recognise that, yes, there are pressures, but we just need to keep going and trying to do the best as we can for Northern Ireland. So thank you to you. Thank you to all of you as well. Thank you for joining us on The Lion's Roar, our podcast. As I say, like and subscribe. Look forward to seeing you again soon.